everyone to the GFF live stream. And this masterclass will be moderated by myself, Rebecca Gibson. I'm replacing Jan Skeen, who is the president of ACTRA Manitoba and the co-chair of ACTRA's Women Committee nationally. And Jan invited me to fill in for her because she is on set today doing what she does best, which is to be an actor. And I am Rebecca Gibson, a partner in Eagle Vision, and I am a longtime fan of the Gimli Film Festival and a writer, actor, director, and producer. I'm delighted to be here. And Norma Bailey, who is a moderator with us today, is an iconic filmmaker, and she is a huge supporter of emerging talent in this industry. She is an internationally renowned filmmaker and a long time driving force behind the Gimli Film Festival. So I would like to acknowledge that the Gimli Film Festival resides on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. And I want to thank everyone for joining us on this beautiful Sunday with Canadian film icon Megan Follows. I may get a little choked up because Megan has been a huge inspiration to me, and we will be talking today about her journey through her career as an actor and as a director and everything in between. Before we get going, I just want to take a moment to note that this panel and all of the free film screenings, masterclasses, and panel discussions this past week on GFF Livestream have been sponsored by RBC. And Jan asked me to give a shout out to ACTRA Manitoba and the support of WCAM, which is the Women's Committee of ACTRA Manitoba, and to the DGC. So thank you for your participation in this event. And we would like to encourage those watching at home or wherever you may be to engage with our guests, with Megan, by asking questions or leaving comments in the live chat. You can find the chat box to the right or below this video. And Norma and I are going to get things started with our esteemed guest here. But feel free to ask questions as they come to you. And I hope that we will get to as many of them as we can throughout the process. Now to introduce Megan. Megan Follows is a Canadian screen icon. As a child, Follows played the unforgettable role in the Canadian TV miniseries Anne of Green Gables, beginning an illustrious career that saw her become a fixture on TV screens across North America. Megan has also followed her passion for filmmaking into the director's chair, directing for shows like Reign and Heartland. A 4-time nominee for a Canadian Screen Award and Gemini winner, please join me in welcoming Megan Follows.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so thrilled that I'm here in the company of someone who I've had such a great pleasure of working with, such a delight, who runs an incredible floor and ship when she's in command, which is Norma Bailey. So thank you, Norma, for asking me to come and participate.
Thank you. So Rebecca and I thought it would be fun to start off with something that we both enjoyed watching, which was your audition for Anne of Green Gables. So if we could play that clip now, that would be great.
This is like the anticipation that you felt waiting to go into the audition room.
Yes, yes, that's exactly.
Megan Follows, test 1. Okay, action.
13. Yeah.
I suppose you're Mr. Matthew Cuthbert. My name is Anne Shirley, spelled with an E. I was beginning to be afraid you weren't going to come for me today, so I made up my mind to climb up that cherry tree and wait for you till morning. Wouldn't that be lovely? And to sleep in a cherry tree all silvery in the moonshine? Wouldn't it?
Well, yes. No, I mean, are you sure there isn't some mistake?
You're Matthew Cuthbert, aren't you? Well, then there isn't any mistake. Mrs. Spencer told me to wait right here for you.
I'm sorry I was late. Let me take your bag.
Oh, no, thank you. It's very light and thin, like me. Well, I am dreadfully thin, aren't I? I mean, I haven't got a pick on my bones. But I do like to imagine that I'm nice and plump with dimples in my elbows. Oh, I better hold on to my bag. If it's not carried in the right way, the handles fall off. It's a very old carpet pad.
Well, that is so beautiful. How old were you when you did that?
I think I was either 16 or 17, because it was a long audition process that went on. And I was one of the first people to audition, and then they went across the country and did a cross-country tour trying to find a real Anne. I was working on Hockey Night. The last job I had done was Hockey Night for the CBC, playing a girl on a all-boys hockey team. In fact, which was Yannick Bisson's first job that he ever did. So,
really? If people don't know, Yannick is the lead in Murdoch Mysteries.
right. So it's interesting looking at that. There were two. So there was. I went to a place on Yonge, near south of Eglinton. I remember there was a place, and it wasn't a casting office the first time, and then a year, months and months and months later, I got another chance to go back in. And it's funny looking at that audition. I'm not sure if that's the very first one that I went to, but it was quite a process, I have to say. It's funny when you look at yourself and you don't even see yourself, if that makes sense.
Oh, and how did you prepare for it?
Between the two times, because there was a lot of dialogue. I mean, the audition scenes were the scene at the train station, being picked up at the train station, which were monologues, pages of dialogue. Then they being in the house, you don't want me because I'm not a boy. And then Matthew's death scene. So there were 3 scenes that had to go on tape. And I literally mean tape, because that's how we did it back then. The VHS cassettes would then be, taken over to. And I think obviously between the first time I auditioned, the importance of the role for me and wanting it and getting another chance, there was definitely a different process. And I remember, because Anne was obviously much younger than I was, and she was going to go on a journey. So within the 4 years, she was going to go from 12 to 16. So having to go back and remember a kind of innocence. Although what's fascinating about Anne is she was never innocent. Her experience in life was never sheltered up to a point. So it's, I always say that the challenge with Anne was that she was, she'd had, an extraordinary exposure to a very harsh world and the way the world thought, but she wasn't not cynical. And cynicism is much more a part of our age in our world, I find, and particularly at that time being young. So to find the optimism of someone, but that's not being saccharine. It's not saying that there isn't a recognition or an understanding that the world is unfair and that the world is can really hurt you. It's saying that in spite of that, I see the beauty around me in the world. And I think that's a testament to Lucy Maud Montgomery, who was no stranger to a lot of hardships and injustices and inequities in life. So that was really it. So I would write on a big piece of paper, I am 12 years old. I'd put it on my wall. Like I was in grade 11. So I would be like trying to do, doing my math homework, probably badly. And I am an orphan. You know, I just put these signs up around me to kind of just, to integrate it, to really own it, so that I could not take the contemporary part of me, and as I said, the cynical part, which was much cooler at the time. You know, that was, you know, it was the Breakfast Club, man. You know, everybody was cool and everybody was being, you know, right? They weren't going, oh my God, a cloud.
May I ask a two-part question, which I think may fold into each other, is how did you begin acting, and how did your process, your technique as an actor, evolve to the point that you were doing your Anne audition where you had this technique in place?
I grew up in a theatrical family. My parents, my mom is still alive. My mom is an actor. My father was an actor and a director. So I grew up around a lot of the great theater actors at the time: Dougie Campbell, William Hutt, Pat Gage, seeing a lot. I think the first play, one of the first plays, and I was 3 or 4, I got snuck in, was like seeing Maggie Smith and Brian Bedford on the thrust stage at Stratford. So that was our world. Was it, you know, it wasn't, you weren't breaking the mold by going on this trajectory. It was everything. My dad used to always say that as a joke, he used to sneak into our room when we were asleep as children and whisper into our ears, "Be a plumber." Be a plumber, you know. But no, it didn't work. So yeah, so that was a technique. You know, I've never really been organized enough to have a technique. It's more, I think it has to feel. I'm definitely more of a inside out. Like if I can feel it, I can navigate it. So it's definitely hard when it doesn't match your experience. Then you really have to get creative about what's familiar with your experience that can either be substituted or you can recognize.
Does that part of the process excite you?
It does, and sometimes it's really intimidating. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable because it's like, it's particularly in auditionings in film and television. If it was theater, you'd have the time to stumble around a little bit and make outrageous choices and fall on your face and figure it out and then go, we're on to something here. But in television particularly, you need to do that. You need to come up with that choice and that work. And it can shift a little bit, but you're going like here it is. Wouldn't you say, Norma, you watch it probably enough auditions for actors in film and television that you are really
well, that's actually the awful thing about auditions now, because before, when we were auditioning, I'd be in a room and the actors would come in and I'd be sitting there with the producer, and the actor would come in having made a choice, and then we could do another choice, have them make another choice, which is, then you could see a range. But now we don't even sit in a room. Now actors, unfortunately, often are doing self-tapes. They have to make a choice. And often I find producers aren't creative enough to realize that that was just a choice.
Yeah.
That isn't the only thing that person can do, but they're rejected because of that choice. So that's a frustrating thing right now in directing, definitely. And I'm sure it must be awful for actors to have to do that.
I agree. I mean, when I crossed over to the other side, my heart was, I loved being in the audition space, sitting next to the casting director often, and oftentimes getting in early enough so if even sometimes a producer was there or wasn't there, I always wanted to give an actor a second chance, because I just know that feeling of going into a room, and if your nerves hijack you, you are effed. You are really just, it can just, And I could see it with some people, and then I could be, okay, whew, shake it off. That's great. Let's do it again. Like, you know, because there's so much pressure on you. You got 2 minutes in that room if you're lucky, 3 minutes, and they're like, now that I'm on the other side, it's like, this is at 10:15, this one will be at 10:20, this is at 10:25. I'm thinking, wait a minute, whoa, we're gonna do this again. So they're always looking at me like, we're backed up. I'm like, yeah, because I just want to give them another chance. So it's very
Yeah, I'm like you. I could never be one of those directors that said, okay, thanks, fine. They came here, they prepared.
Yeah.
You have to respect that. And yeah, and often, you know, if they made a bold choice, I always loved that. You can always, you know, Rebecca, you know, being an actor, you go into those auditions all the time.
Now I act less and I'm directing and producing more. But I've had the experience as a casting director, as an actor, and in those other capacities. And so even now in the work that I do, I like to get in the room. And I think people should make fast choices. I think actors need to know that they need to make those bold choices. I've always seen successful auditions as the ones where they go, that one, within 5 seconds. They know oftentimes. And I love to see the generosity of directors when they give somebody a choice. And then sometimes I've seen casting directors who try to shift the actor's really great, bold choices when the director is not in the room. And then they end up sending in a tape that is never going to get that actor cast, which is really frustrating. Mm-hmm. It's hard to navigate.
Well, we were talking, Megan, about, you know, the process. You do have a process, of course, because we are talking about being on set on Reign and how I always enjoyed working with you because you did have a process. You came in and you had to, if there were props that you just had to work everything out and walk over there. And if you wanted to walk over there, I would, of course, say, does it work for you if you walk over here instead? Because that's where the camera is pointing. And if you go over there, then that's a whole other lighting setup. But that you did have a process, and I always enjoyed watching you work it out. And it took a little bit of time, but once you had it, it was gold. It was you. You had it, and that I always loved that about working with you.
I think I'm always amazed. Oftentimes in television, how little time is given for between the action and the cut, like for a performance, and how much time is given for the lighting setup, which is critical. It needs it. But the actors are often, you know, leaving a scene going, oh, was that okay? Oh my God, did I get that? I don't, because it's like, it's gotten there. Okay, that's great, moving on. You know, because the lighting, the setup takes so much time. And so that time is always factored into the clock from production's point of view. And some actors are amazing at just being able to free fall and go, okay. And then some actors are not. And then you start to see scenes fall apart because they're not grounded. People don't know why. They don't know why they're saying what they're saying. Even actors that have it memorized, if things will start to fall apart. So I think for me, probably honestly, age at that point, I was not willing to be rushed.
Yeah.
And I also realized that the devil's in the detail. That's just it. So as detailed as that incredible shaft of light is hitting that back and that candle over there, I have to match that detail. I have to now take all of that and make it my world, because the audience isn't going to fall in love with your lighting. They're going to fall in love with how that lighting is hitting a character, or how they're being devious in the shadows, or how they're whatever. I mean, obviously I'm an actor in my soul, so I'm an advocate for that, but I really feel like when all of those stars align and we watch shows, and it's because you can check every box. It looks fantastic, but the detail in the performances and the structure in the writing, it's that dance, right? So I think I loved those sets on Reign too, I have to say, Norma. They were so fun to play with. And I always felt like, well, the other character in Reign is this castle. It's the secret passageways. It's the boxes, the little bottles of poison that I have. I mean, that's the stuff that otherwise you have oftentimes people saying not the most complicated dialogue. Perhaps a lot of it's expositional. And you're having to do you're doing a generic walk and talk. Which is what I loved about working with you, because that wasn't my experience with you. And I'm sure, though, when we watch a lot of television, you can see, oh, here's the walk and talk. They're walking from here to here. And I always go, why? Why are you walking there? I mean, I know, I get it, but is there a bench? Are you trying? Like, why are you stopping right now? I know the light's there, but why? Like, what's in the text that's making you stop right there? Because that's what we do.
Yeah, that's a challenge for the directors always, is because they come onto set with a plan.
Yeah.
And then you have to make it work for the actors, and some of them resist more than others. And you can lose the confidence of your actors if that way, very easily. And if you rush them, if you say that's good enough, that's good, and we're going to move on, and they don't feel that was their best, you can really lose actors that way. So but the clock is always ticking, as you said. You're right in the middle of, I got to get this done in a certain amount of time, and if I don't move on, I'm not going to get the next scene, and then you're in trouble, because if you don't shoot it, you don't have it in the editing room.
I know. That's I mean, as actors, we're in bubbles. We're sort of in protective bubbles, or even bubbles we create for ourselves, which I wouldn't have really have had. I wouldn't have seen it that way till I was on the other side. But I remember Craig Parker, talking about that. It's like you actually don't want them to know too much about what's going on. In a way, you kind of want to protect them from the shit.
Oh, yeah. You never bring that to them, ever. You just, no, that's a no-no for sure.
Yeah. And it's hard because sometimes, depending on a set, if a producer's huffing or having a moment, or the DP going like this, you're kind of wanting to go, okay, guys, shh. Or the AD, having to say a couple times to an AD, okay, let's take this conversation off of the set.
That's the child actor who's got to leave in 2 minutes. That's,
Oh, and when you're working with young people too, that is brutal. When all of a sudden it's like, you do realize that you have 5 minutes to get this scene because they have to be off the clock. And you're like, ah!
One of the questions from ACTRA, from Jan, is about the director-actor relationship. And I know that we've just spoken about that, but I wonder how a nervous actor who may not consider themselves to, sometimes you get a role, but you're wondering if there was a mistake and you're not famous and what if they fire you? How do you build your empowerment and your relationship with the director in the moment on set?
I think it totally depends on the director and who actually is interested and willing to see that, or not every director I've found is an actor's director, mm-hmm. Or has a discernment on that. Deeply subjective thing to say, but that's been my experience. Some directors understand that more strongly than others and know how to communicate with you, are interested in that process, know how to connect. It it's very strange when you're on a series for a long time and you have rotating directors, in the sense of who you feel safe with, or who you know gets you, or who's going to really help you, or oh no, okay, they don't really. It's like being in school with teachers. You know, this teacher gels with you and this teacher doesn't. But I will say it's funny, and again, thinking about Reign, and I won't mention any particular character, but I remembered, you know, that thing about fear, or people coming in that might have been green, who may not have been helped in a way, so that I could recognize that there's something really cool here. You're just not helping. You're not telling them what they need to know. You're now making an assumption that that's not happening. They're not capable of delivering that. And I think they're just nervous, or they don't understand this territory. And actually, if you, but that requires a director. And again, that's why it's so fantastic working with you, Norma, because you listen to actors and you see how to help an actor make an adjustment.
Yeah, but you need the generosity of the other actors too. You know, it's a whole,
yes,
they can undermine that. But yeah, I pay a lot of attention to what I call the day players, because often on a series, you've got a big family. They've been working together, sometimes for years. They know each other's foils and their warts and everything. And then someone just gets thrown into that. And how do they fit in? How do they instantly become what everybody wants them to be? And I think directors don't often pay a lot of attention to them. Sometimes don't even know their names. I mean, that's the last thing I do when I'm standing there with the AD. What's his name? What's her name? What's his name? What's her name? I'm not going to call them. I'm not going to not refer to them by their name. That's the first thing, and then pay attention to them. They aren't the main character, and often your tendency is just to go straight to the leads, to the main characters, but you just have to pay attention to them because of what you're just saying. They're nervous. Even a really established character actor is still on this set for the first time with all these people who have been together.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the other thing is that oftentimes it's very important to them. So what's wonderful is they're really bringing their game, and they are absolutely, they're excited. They might be nervous. They have ideas, and they want to, they're the detail, and they're all those details, and they're really wonderful.
Well, and the other thing about that is that if you get a great character actor come in, it automatically ups the game of the people who are there every day. I saw it so vividly on Mary Kills People. It was Maggie Hushalek.
Right.
She came in, and they didn't, and she just I could just see it. She just blew their minds and shifted the whole thing so that it was just so much richer. And I love that about her. She took a crazy chance, and it really, really worked. And it was beautiful.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And then, back to that point about you're up against a clock in television so much. So it's amazing. At the end of the day, that is what makes that episode or that show or moments like that work. Mm-hmm. And it's a hard thing to protect when you're in a machine up against a clock. So it's my heart is always with the actors.
I've been asked to encourage us to show another clip.
So I was just going to say, let's show the final scene of Anne of Green Gables. Now you're 16 now, right?
When I'm doing this, I'm probably 17.
But in Anne, you're supposed to be 16.
I'm 16, yeah.
Okay.
Whoa. Hello, Anne.
Taking a shortcut, Mr. Blythe.
Miss Cuthbert said I could find you here. Open it.
We would be prepared to agree to your proposal to engage Miss Shirley under contract for 1 year in the post of teacher at Avonlea Public School. That's your post.
Well, I took the liberty of speaking to the trustees about an exchange. I'd be getting Carmody, and you can stay at Green Gables.
I don't know what to say.
Don't say anything.
But you'd have to pay for your board. Never save enough for college. You can't.
I'll save enough. Besides, I'm keeping up my studies by correspondence.
So am I. Thank you for giving up the school for me, Gilbert. It's very good of you. I want you to know that I really appreciate it.
I figure you can give me a hand with my work, and we'll call it a fair exchange.
Aren't you worried? I'm liable to break another slate over your head.
I'm more worried I might break one over yours. Carrots. Walk you home.
Like, don't need to watch the credits. Thank you, thank you.
Oh, that almost is heartbreaking to see Johnny.
Yeah, he passed away. Yeah.
Yeah. What a talented, what a sweetheart, talented, funny man, funny young man who we lost way too soon.
Yeah.
So that's always like, it's very funny watching that. It took us 3 times to get that, to get that, to that ending, which was quite contentious. Not Jonathan and I. There was different versions of it, and there was something that the director-writer wanted, that Kevin Sullivan wanted. There was something that I wanted with Jonathan, and there was something the network. We were trying to figure out how the right tone to end it on, and which I think is right, and that's the one that you see. Because I remember at one point there had been wanting to like actually have her push him and slap, and it was a different tone. It was one of those things where as an actor, you put your neck out on a line when you really believe in something, and when you come up against a different force who has a different point of view, which was contentious for sure. So literally there was 3 times, every time we go to do the ending of Anne, that and the second one, Anne of Avonlea, there was a difference of how that ending should be. Do we like the ending? Do we think it works?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. But my question, do you mean you shot at 3 different times 3 different endings, or that day?
No, 3 different times.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, just tonally, I think Kevin had wanted at first more of a, he didn't want that, you know, he wanted like some more rough housing or something. We were trying to see if, are we going to have them kiss? Like, are they going to kiss? So, you know, and I think then what we came to was, and it is quite beautiful because of the period, like how big that gesture actually was. It's, you know, then what that's the first contact of intimate contact that I believe in the whole show, that he gets, that she allows him, that she receives. So I think that I'm glad that I fought for it. And it was always beautiful to go, because it was all done at magic hour. So we only had a very short window, right? I can just see we had a beautiful makeup artist, Shauna Jabor, and Ivan Lynch was incredible hairman, and we were just lying in the grass, days of heaven, waiting for that sun to be at the right point on the
And I was wondering, of course, what did they put there for the horse so that he stayed there? That's what I was.
You know what? Probably, and the horse is not going down to eat, because that's always the thing when you work with horses. Their heads are like
lunch.
Probably the Wrangler off with another. Must have been, because yeah, that horse is doing pretty good.
Yeah,
they picked their calmest horse.
Yeah. I have a question about tone, since it came up. As a director and as an actor, I know actors coming to an audition sometimes don't know the tone of the show, and that can really bite them in the ass. Is there any way to communicate that through the casting director? That's an acting question. And same with day players, how to communicate that. And if they haven't seen the show, if it's maybe the first season. And secondly, how does a director settle on tone?
Well, Norma can speak to this too. I mean, if it's a series, it's something that's really been determined by the showrunners, the creators. So it's an understanding, with the provision that perhaps it might be changing and growing into something. And I think Reign would be an example of that, where the tone in the pilot, they were creating that and finding what that was. And then the first season, it was a bit of a roller coaster ride for when they were getting it right. What was the tone of this show? How outlandish, how serious, how, you know, it's a CW show ultimately. So there, you know, there's a lot of young, beautiful people wanting to sleep with each other, and they got to get through a lot of corsets. But I always said, you know, Reign was ultimately, it was a medieval soap opera at its best. It was a historical fantasy. So the stakes always had to be really high, because it wasn't really realistic, but you had to be realistic in it, but it had to be. So I think in terms of actors, because this happens more and more where you don't get the whole script, and really, if it's coming down, if it's something like a Marvel or whatever, it's like Fort Knox. You're not even doing the sides from the material. You're doing something completely. I guess you can try. All you can do is ask as many questions as you can. And now, unfortunately, to Norma's point, you're not in the room looking at a casting person or a director. But if you ever are and you have a question, I never mind someone asking me a question if it's for clarification, because why stab around in the dark?
It's really one of the first things you should say to an actor. But, and, you know, now, you know, in directing television now, you have an extremely arduous tone meeting on every episode you're doing. You sit down and there's maybe 3 or 4 network executives somewhere out in the atmosphere talking to you, and you go through every line, every character, and someone takes notes, and then you put those notes into your script, so that you know exactly what the intention. There's really almost no excuse for not knowing the intention of a scene or a line or a word even these days. It's, you know, it's not a great way to work, but that's the way it is now.
It's interesting who does the tone meeting with you, because often the tone meeting can also be done by the writer of the episode.
Well, the writer is one of those people, yes, definitely.
So depending on the show or how long the show's been on, so how many executives are in the room or not, what I do like about a tone meeting is it's the time I get the clarification on what the expectation is, because sometimes it's not on the page.
Yeah, no, it's very...
A writer may think,
yeah,
or even an executive, honestly, sorry, they may think, well, this is what's being achieved. And then you're getting it and you're thinking, what the fuck? Oh, that's what you guys think that. Okay. So then the actor in me is going, okay. So that actually means, and it's that time, because you don't get that time on the floor when you're doing it. You're now going, oh, you think by him doing blah, 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 and her not taking it, you think that means, oh, okay. So if I was acting now, how would I then, okay, now I get it. And it's kind of the last time. And sometimes it all works and you're like, absolutely, it's really clear. And then sometimes I'm sure it's like overthought because there's a micromanagement of stuff. But that's usually also the, you know, when you hand it off to the actors, they're going to bring a whole other thing to it themselves as well. So that's an interesting balancing act. Don't you think, Norma?
Oh, that's huge, because with all the planning that you do in prep, because you know what this is like, I always say you start kind of here and then you get down to the nitty gritty and then the more and more and more details, and you never actually are with the words and the actors until it's too late almost. And then you really do need to know what that is about. And the amazing thing about actors is they bring things in that you never even thought of, because that's who they are, and they've gone through the script as themselves.
Yeah.
You know, you've gone through the script with this person, and you miss stuff. Like I've definitely missed stuff as a director, thought, oh, wow, of course that would be that way. And then you know, they enrich it, which is, and it's challenging for a director because, you know, you think, oh shit, I should know all that. I should have thought of that, but I'll fake it and pretend that I did. And, you know.
You did that very well. I think you get an ACTRA award for that then, Norma. Like you knew what you were doing. No, I think you articulated that really well, because my job as an actor is deeply subjective, is to protect my character.
Yeah.
You know, it's my experience. So that's my job as the actor. It's very narrow and very deep. My job as the director is now shallower, but the whole, what's your note? My job as the actor is to play my note, multiple shades of that note or tones of that note. But I'm not playing you. You're playing, but the director isn't doing that. So I remember one example, and this is where, as an actor too, and when you're in that environment, again, do your homework so that you've thought of these things in advance and you have things to offer and you are flexible to drop them and change them, but you have a reason for what you're thinking. We had a scene where we were getting out of a carriage, and in the first season, it would have, the king is getting out of the carriage, and the king is getting out of the carriage with his mistress, Bastia's mother, Diane, and the queen is having to wait alongside, and then the queen is to join, and they're to walk away. And so they had the carriage ride and open the carriage, and they're going to just walk away. And I said, I'm so sorry. You're going to have the queen and the king's mistress just walk away without a beat, with a moment. I said, these two women, are we having to walk together side by side? Is the king going to walk behind us and look at his property? Is the king and his mistress going to walk ahead and I'm going to look like, fuck me, I'm having to walk behind. How do we want to do this? So Alan then had thoughts, and I think Alan then wanted to sort of walk ahead. And so then I was like, great, so let Diane and I just give me a moment, because I had no dialogue in the scene. And it's the first time that you saw Diane again next to Catherine. So it goes by, I'm sure Norma can just hear them all going, oh, fuck. No, she's come up with another idea. But it was detailed. And it was
that should have been thought of.
But that should have been thought of. And that should have been thought of by the writer. It should have been thought of by, it was missed on many stages, because then the scene was going to become about the king's new younger mistress looking at where her position was. And they were just thinking about that. I said, but yes, but she better see how one mistress is treated by somebody else, because that's going to help her. That's the detail, right? And that's where that's why it's fun on a set.
But that's why it's so challenging as a director, because you should be deep into those characters in the same way as each actor is. You really should be. But the pressure is so great, and you have so much else to do in prep, that you really almost don't get to that point until you're shooting.
No, you're right. I mean, they had a train of 6 horses coming down, and they had however many extras, and now they're outside, and they have to make sure that there's enough silks to cover for the sun. So where's the carriage going to land, and how many shots are they going to? I mean, absolutely. And then, but at the end of the day, it's true. On the screen, what will we remember? We'll remember the moment that the king, looked with, greed and lust at his new mistress, handed off his old mistress, and had his wife there. So that is where you really have to, as actors, I say too, that's where you really have to think about your moments.
Yeah. Do you have another question, Rebecca? If not,
I wanted to address a couple of the questions that people were sending in, and I think it speaks to this. It's from Jan Skeen. She says, Megan, you have such incredible calm confidence on screen, such a genuine presence that all actors strive for. Do you experience on-set nervous energy? And if so, how do you harness it?
Absolutely. I think at one point I remembered learning that not to fight my nerves, that nerves were just energy, and not to attach a meaning to it, but to recognize the physical chemistry in my body, what was happening, to remember to breathe. In fact, it's like in the theater, what's interesting is it's when you have no nerves or something that you're actually in trouble. For me, a bit, because then I realize, oh, like now I got to pick it up. Like I'm not either listening or I've unplugged, like I've disconnected too much. So that the nerves are the kind of the kinetic connection. And then, I always love to have a bottle of water around. I drink a lot of water on set as an actor. I get thirsty, my mouth gets dry. My mouth gets dry because I'm nervous. And because
what in corsets? Like, those costumes, I always never drink water when I'm in a corset, because I'm like, how is this even going to work? Do you get nervous about peeing? I do.
Sure you do. And well, yeah. Now I'm just going to drink that water, and if I need to pee, I'm going to say, excuse me.
People.
It's tough, when you're out on location. It is tough when you're in, oh my goodness, just thinking about the heat in Reign in particular, and those costumes, and Adelaide and Will camped on horses when I was directing, and it was almost 40 degrees Celsius. We were in a heat wave. The humidity was 90%. I was dangerously so. We had to have all the meetings beforehand about that and how to find the shade. And they were on horses having to come up, and I had an extender or the techno crane bringing them in. And then I had 5 men in full sort of red velvet, the English in their coats. And those costumes that we wore often in Reign, sometimes because of Meredith Mark were Pollock, who was our designer, had so much fun. She would create them with, she started to use a lot of different kind of materials, upholstery materials, different things that didn't necessarily breathe naturally was the point of that. So those costumes looked incredible. I almost got heat stroke once, I think, in those costumes, because I wore a wig as well. So then you forget when actors are wearing wigs, they're also, it's like wearing a toque on their head. They're not getting that. They're not getting their heat expelled. So drink water, water, water.
But then when the worst thing for the director is
Waiting.
One of the women has to go to the bathroom and you just go, no.
No, here goes 15 minutes.
They're going to have to go back to the circus. They're going to have to then get redressed. And it's like 15 to half an hour. It's like,
yeah.
Speaking of, I'm being yelled at in all caps with an exclamation point. Clip time. So my tweet.
Okay, so this is a clip from, the next clip is a clip from Boys and Girls, which is a beautiful half hour that was made by Atlantis, I think in the 80s.
It was their first
adaptation of a Canadian short story by Alice Munro, and it won an Academy Award. So here is a couple of fantastic scenes from it. How old are you in this one?
I'm 12. 12.
12.
Yeah, no, I am actually 12.
Wow, fantastic.
Shut the gate!
There we go.
Anyway, it was her fault that Flora got away.
What?
She could have shut the gate, but instead she opened it and Flora ran out.
Is that right? What did you do that for?
She's crying.
Never mind. She's only a girl.
It's a beautiful movie.
It is a beautiful movie. David Fox, Claire Coulter, Wayne Robson. I'm forgetting the little boy's name now. Really, I mean, again, I feel so blessed to have worked with such extraordinary actors again. Cornerstones, people who really contribute so much to our industry. It's so beautiful. David Fox was so great in that. That was, I believe, the second film that Atlantis had ever made. The first one was a short story based on a children's book that Margaret Lawrence made called The Olden Days Coat. So I was in The Olden Days Coat. I was 10 when I did The Olden Days Coat. An actress, Kate Parr, was in that. And I remember we shot that in Peterborough in an old farmhouse. And I remember there was no heat in that farmhouse. And it was February. It went down on that to -50 at one point. And back in the days with film, we didn't realize there was a day we had to reshoot because it had gotten so cold that it had damaged the film. But I remember sitting around a kitchen with Margaret Lawrence. You know, she was smoking away. And of course, Boys and Girls is Alice Munro. So again, these beautiful stories by these incredible Canadian women. And in the case of Boys and Girls, also that, for me, I always had this lucky, you know, in Canada, the stories we were telling, and at that time was this real acknowledgement of the struggle of what it meant to be female. Like the weight or the consequences or what you were up against. And that was, in that moment, the horse is getting old and the horse is acting up, and the father wants to shoot the horse and send it off to the glue factories, basically. So there was an earlier scene in that where the young girl, Margaret, goes in and the horse is really angry in the stall. And she's fascinated by the power and the energy of this beautiful animal that they don't have a need for anymore on the farm. It doesn't serve a function. They can't. So, you know, just a beautiful piece of writing.
Well, the horse wanting freedom was such a beautiful metaphor for what you, of course, were going through you know, in growing up, and the relationship with your father and how he was rejecting you, but I don't think he really wanted to. It was just the times made him.
I think so too. And I remember, because there's a great scene with Claire Coulter too, and she's trying to keep giving her lace and things to kind of get dressed, and Margaret doesn't want to. She wants to keep her pants on and her boots, and she doesn't want to start putting on dresses and being funneled into the expectations of what her gender was expecting of her. So I was very lucky as a young artist, as a young actor, that those were the stories and the challenges as characters that I got to be exploring. You know?
But how did you get to the point that you did in that movie? How did you get to those feelings? Did you work with somebody? Did you talk to the writer? Or
I did. Our director was Don McBrearty. I did not. I think that you know, I can't say that crying comes easily to me, but understanding a situation and the upset of that would be something I could relate to. Wanting the approval of my father in that piece, you know, as a young girl, I always, I sort of touched upon that a bit and when we were all the mentors and mentees, when we were talking about, funnily enough, my safe space and place would be performing around people and being able to channel feelings. That's, you know, would have been, you know, as I said, I had parents as actors. The first time I ever saw my father cry was on stage. And I remember I had never seen my father cry. Never seen my father cry. And I remember as a kid, like, just, he's crying. Like, so, so I guess there was a freedom of expression. And I think, and I think even then, I always had the capacity to be deeply subjective, but outside, and know this is what's needed in this moment. Like, that's what it says it, but that's what it'll serve. So being able to just to be able to do that. Yeah, I never had coaches. When I was younger, sometimes my mom, it was a different time back then too, because we worked more hours. We worked hours, hours and hours. We didn't have tutors. And I happened to love it. So I was lucky. I loved being on a set. I loved the crew. I loved being in that world. It was funnily, you know, it felt like a safe haven for me. Yeah.
May I ask, in terms of your path, because you began as an actor and now you're also a director, and I wonder about training. If, you know, of course there are people watching who can't follow that same path, but are there any recommendations that you would give for people to surround themselves with ways to learn and grow as artists?
I mean, I seem to always fall back on, you know, I think there's tremendous value in the theater, and the value in the theater are the texts that you're working with, and the complexities of the stories, and the complexities of the writing. Because often you're working on the first time, because I started in film and television, and it's different. It's often moments like what we just saw. It's being able to see a young person heartbroken because their fathers dismissed them. So you, that's, you know, again, for me, that's very feeling oriented. Then, and so sometimes you have very few words. She didn't have any words at that table. But when we work on complicated stories, I always think that they're so much bigger and brighter and more than I am personally. So there's a reaching for something to grow into. If you're lucky enough, if you're lucky enough to work with directors that are want to create with you, and you're in that, and someone has your back, you get to do that exploration. You know, I just read like an whole biography of Liv Ullmann's, you know, and her relationship with Ingmar Bergman. You know, those things are very rare when you are in the company of someone who's an auteur and a creative genius that wants to take you along on a journey. I mean, oftentimes as directing in episodic television, you're serving a master, and as actors, you're running along, you know, you're having to protect yourself by showing up. So any opportunity, long way around to say, any opportunity you can get to also do things where the end result is not, there isn't pressure on that end result, helps you grow and get better, right? Because that's, and then you have the freedom to make the wrong choice, and that's okay, especially if you're, you know, because how the hell do you get better? What would you say, Norma?
Well, I would say that, you know, probably theater school would be a good, you know, that would be a good reason to go to theater school or to go to film school or as an actor, because then you get to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to play and just learn about yourself and challenge.
I also think that now what's so fascinating is, you know, we have people can make their own things in a way that they couldn't before. So getting together creatively with people is not exorbitant. It's not like, how the hell are we going to buy the film and pay for the processing? And now you get to do that more. So trying to find like-minded people to grow with and to play with. Yeah. And then on a more accessible sort of easy thing is watch things. Watch interesting performances and great pieces of writing and wonderful direction, and watch different directors, watch bodies of works of people. So you see more than one thing and you see their growth. And then you can start to see their style, where you can recognize, you know, Tarantino's style, you can recognize Spike Lee's style, and they're always growing and changing too.
And there's so much on the internet now too. Like you can watch a YouTube of an actor being interviewed.
Yeah.
Maggie Smith being interviewed. You can see everything now, and you learn a lot. I learn a lot from, and after many television series, every episode, like Breaking Bad, after the episode, or Better Call Saul,
making of, right? They do.
Between all the creators. Well, that's invaluable. Those things are fantastic.
Yeah.
Just doing it yourself. Like I agree. I say to people, just do it. Grab a camera, get your friends, and just do it.
Yeah.
People can see your ability from a 5-minute something that you create.
Yeah.
Shall we play? Do we have any questions that we should address? Because we could play the clip from Reign, if not.
I'd love to get to the question, what is the best thing about acting and what is the best thing about directing?
Oh, the best thing about directing so far is when you often is not an immediate experience that I have. It's when I'm sitting back and looking at the edit, or I'm working on the cut, and I see it come together. I see that the idea that I had here has translated and it works. That's one of the best, when it works. I mean, the whole communal process is amazing. Oftentimes there's such a pressure of time that it's not, yeah, maybe for me, that's one of the things is going, yes, I love that shot. Yes, that's happening. That moment was achieved. We're telling that story. And also, and I love when you have a good relationship with a DP and the camera operator doing that dance, like all of us coming together to tell that story is amazing. And then acting, really, it's like being on drugs. When it's good and you're in it and you've kind of channeled something and you're, yeah, and if it's funny and you're working with other people, that listening, that play of back and forth, something happening when I mean, my God, we get to dress up and do make-believe. It's like we never, it's like being anybody who tells you actors aren't kids at heart is lying.
But you also get to go to places in yourself, in your being, that you wouldn't, even if it's dark. You can go there and play in there for a while and feel it out and then just leave it.
Absolutely. I did a stage production of Night Mother at Soul Pepper Theater Company a number of years ago, and I did it with my mother. And for people who know Night Mother, it's a one-act play that goes by in real time, and the daughter says she's going to kill herself at the beginning of the play, and the mother doesn't kind of believe her, and then the rest of the play, the mother's basically sort of talking her out of it, and we're talking about life. And at the end of the play, the daughter locks herself in the bathroom, and you hear the gun go off. So my mother and I, it was an extraordinary experience that we had together. And when the lights would go down, as my mother was at the phone calling the 911 for them to come, because, the lights would go down and then she'd find her way to the door and I'd be standing, I'd be waiting and the flats backstage, and it would be deathly silent in the theater. It was very upsetting production. People didn't know what to do with it. It made them very uncomfortable. We would just hug each other and we'd be like, we feel so great because we'd done it. Like we'd gone on this weird, this crazy ride. So you're right, Norma, because you get to go into places, even like I was saying, I loved playing Juliet and Romeo and Juliet. You get to fall deeply in love and take charge of your own destiny. And be at the fates at the same time and then die for something, you know. And when you've taken that dagger and you've done your moment and you're lying on the floor trying not to breathe too heavily, is never was there a tale of such woe. You know, you're like, yeah, you know, you've like cried and you've loved and then it's like 3 hours of living someone else's life and stakes. And that's why when the writing too, when something is complicated, and whether I'm using theater because often the material, the writing, if it's classical theater, it's stood a test of time, so its complexity is, but having to expose yourself and be in someone else's shoes. Yeah, it's funny. I never thought about it as taking something and, you know, wrapping it around myself. I felt like you kind of get into it. It's like you transport into the soul of someone else, and you know, I got to be a queen in a castle, you know. It's pretty delicious.
Let's show you as that queen in that castle. Can we show the clip of Reign, please? And this is Megan.
Ferdinand, my dearest brother.
Dearest? How many brothers did she have?
My darling brother Ferdinand. Tonight, I end my life willingly.
Mention her fondness for France, its culture and beauty.
It's a suicide letter, not an enticement to pilgrims.
Why did she jump? We need a reason.
She was lonely.
What does a woman in her position have to be lonely about? That's ridiculous.
You try then.
The man she loved was someone she could never have. Poor girl. Describe him as ruggedly handsome with the sexual prowess of a lion.
Oh, you were serious.
The looks of a Greek god, the might of a lion. She didn't write this.
I know, it's hard to see someone in your family is capable of such passion.
What she was incapable of was writing. She never learned. The note is a forgery. I fear my dear sister was the victim of foul play. Likely by someone inside the castle. If that is the case, Bohemia will have no choice but to...
You're right. It's forged, and I know who was responsible. The Duchess's lover.
She had a lover.
I don't think we need to sully the lady's memory with tawdry details.
Henry, our dear guest deserves an honest account of what happened. Last night, I happened to walk in on the Duchess while she was entwined in the throes of passion with a man she barely just met.
My sister?
I was shocked, I assure you. But I had no intention of gossiping about her indiscretion. As my husband will attest, I'm not a judgmental person. Henry?
She's really not.
But when news of Cecilia's suicide erupted, I was immediately suspicious of this lover. And I had him questioned under torture until he revealed to me the actual course of events.
And those were?
Well, filled with remorse, Cecilia, the chaste, pious royal that she was, threw herself out of the window, afraid of the shame that this moment of weakness would bring to your family.
Poor dear Cecilia.
And her lover, not wanting to further your family's anguish, wrote the note to protect their secret, making it appear that your sister's pain was due to a much more palatable, unrequited love.
Unrequited? This note mentions sexual prowess.
I think that was just wishful thinking on the part of the writer. Right, Henry?
So her lover wrote the note in an effort to protect her honor.
Ill-advised, but gallant.
I want to see this lover.
The heart is a strange beast.
You tortured a man of the cloth.
We didn't know he was a priest at the time. He wasn't wearing his collar, or much of anything else.
And you killed him?
Unintentionally. Sometimes Our interrogators get a bit too energetic when faced with a reluctant subject.
My sister. I don't believe it.
I think we
I
can
knew that
stop
once or
there.
twice she had looked for consolation in the arms of others.
Great.
Wow.
Job, Norma. Funny.
But that is it. It was, you know, Reign wasn't campy, but they decided they wanted this to be campy, this episode, which was lots of fun. Because as a director, you're kind of stuck with the episodes you get, and this one was fun.
Yeah, I think Reign was, was at its best when it could have a little camp. Obviously, because I took it and ran with it. So, but it was fun, It was outrageous. It was silly. So it was fun. Yeah, no, that was great. I know for people who don't know the episode that the king had slept with this woman and he'd gotten too close to the window. And as he was making love to her, the window opened and she fell out the window and died. So then he'd come to his wife to solve the problem and clean up the mess, which she did. And then they had to make this whole ridiculous story up to cover up the fact that it was the king who was responsible for her death. So it was fun.
I think we should go on to the last one, because this is the only one we have of you directing, which I think is important for people to see. So let's see the next one. This is from Heartland, right?
Yes.
This is the first that you directed Reign first. That was your first directing?
Yes, I directed Reign first. I had actually directed in the theater first, and then I directed Reign, and I directed 3 episodes of Reign, 1 in the third season, 2 in the 4th season. And then I directed Murdoch. I went on to direct Murdoch Mysteries. And then I directed Heartland. And I have since directed about 5 episodes of Heartland, which is a great show to work on. And the reason I wanted to look at Heartland was because of the element of stunts and working with things that are actually very complicated to work with. So I remember Grant Harvey said to me, because I had worked with Grant Harvey on Heartland many, many years before. The first time I'd come on, I played a character. I played Ty's mother, his recovering addict mother who drops into Heartland every now and then. And I remembered when I started to work on it, he said, people always, they think, oh, Heartland, it's a family drama. It's, on the ranch. He said, it's a much more difficult show to direct than people imagine. I imagine you've directed Heartland, Norma. Have you directed Heartland? Because you are working with animals and weather that can change like that. I mean, within one scene in Heartland, I had no clouds, no storm. It was winter. I had a wall of snow coming. By the time I got to the close-up of one person, I had full-on snow coming, which wasn't going to match my master, and then an end thing where they were supposed to look at a beautiful vista landscape that was gone. So I thought, this particular thing we had, it's a storm. So there's animals, there was having machines to create the wind, things having to fly, and working around very powerful animals.
And stunt doubles. You've got stunt
doubles, and amazing stunt doubles, and how you have to work with actors and stunt doubles, and the cutting of what's required to go back and forth. So that's what I thought was cool about this.
Okay, let's see that clip.
Easy. Here, I got it. Don't let yours get away from you. Come on. Come on, follow on. Come on, horse. Stay with me. Come on. There we go. Let's go.
So that was that little bit. I think there was one other clip too we had of another, I don't know if they had it of the rodeo too, which also.
Oh, sorry, Megan. I didn't know you wanted another clip. That's the only one we have.
Okay. Yeah, it's just an interesting, you only get so many takes with animals because they're extremely powerful, and you have to be, you have to be incredibly careful.
Yeah.
And with animals, because there's not, you have to protect people and make sure they're safe, because a lot of things can go wrong. Yeah.
I remember Felix Gray on Reign, who's the first AD, saying to me, okay, Norma, on my first Reign, he said, I know you probably have all these ideas about how you'd like to shoot this scene with the queen coming in, her, you know, this happening and this happening, and they're going to ride in and they're going to get off the horse and they're going to, and he said, okay, I just want you to know they can't get on a horse, they can't get off of a horse, and they can't really ride a horse. So then you have to work from that. You have to design your shots so that you're always cutting to somebody else while the stunt double does this and the person gets off. And because they had all those enormous clothes on, they couldn't get on horses. It was just, I remember, I'll never forget him saying that to me. He's great.
I mean, and Heartland is amazing because those actors do know how to get on horses. They do know how to ride horses.
Heartland was great.
Amber Marshall knows. I mean, she's amazing on a horse. And then up to a point, they're also only allowed to do so much for insurance purposes, because they could actually do more, but they're very wise and careful to protect that, because horses are powerful. And the wranglers on that show, I have nothing but tremendous respect. The other clip, which we don't have, which was the opening of an episode, which was a rodeo that goes wrong, and the person has to go flying right over the horse onto the ground. And what they want is for you to get it in one take, because you don't get too many options with that. But we didn't really get it as dynamically as I know we could. And it was a difference of opinion of where the camera could be. And they felt a little bit of a different way. So then we did it again and we had parts of it, but it still wasn't, quite right. And I went to the head wrangler and I said, if you feel it's safe, I understand. I would love one more chance at this. If the rider is okay. And they talked about it and he was. And then I said, let's bury this camera. I want it lower. I need to be lower. So let's dig out the ground lower. And you're back far. So you're on long lenses when you're around animals, because you cannot be around those animals. And we got the camera so that the body of the camera itself could be right on the ground. And that's the one that's in the episode, because it's very dynamic. And this incredible young rider who was doubling for the actor, I mean, Jesus, they're flying and they're going off. And even just having the horse come down the chute and these animals that look at you, in Boys and Girls, what was interesting, okay, because this is back in the 80s, so we didn't have, we had riders and wranglers, but I was really in front of that horse. So that horse was not very far behind me. I ran down that lane and they let that horse go, and however they got that horse to go, and it was going. I mean, I literally had enough time to shut that gate and then open that gate, because that horse was coming at me. So I doubt we would do that the same way today. There's no way they would put a child ever in that position. It wouldn't happen. So I was lucky because it was okay, but I think about a lot of that as a kid. I jumped off of rafts into rivers with no life jacket on. It's like that's why we have union laws with kids. But I was lucky. I worked with great people. I worked with, so I never was aware of being, I never didn't want to do it, because often actors are like, no, I'll do it. I want to do it. I want to do it. Let me do it. And, and they're really exuberant. And sometimes you have to go, okay, well, I know you do. But, we can't do that. So it's, but it's beautiful when you can see, I mean, there was a moment where the actor was so the stunt guys were incredible doubles that they had on that in the barn holding these horses. And then you have wind machines going. And then I had wanted to, because the barn ends up collapsing, I had wanted to not do like a clean cutaway of boards flying, because I often like, oh, there's the cutaway, the boards are flying. I said, can we have boards flying in this master? Can you be ripping them off? Oh no, the on the ground effects people were like, yeah, because they always love it. So they're up on the roof, you know, with things pulling off boards, and you can see it when he comes in the master, you can see the boards going. That tells me more, we're in danger. This thing is going down. It's not just enough for the actor to go, oh, the barn's gonna fall down, right? You know, we can do that, and we will resort to that if we have to, but if we can see it. And we did that in the horses, you know. So then we had the real actor in that one point, and he was just holding it, and the horse just did something, and that actor felt the power of that horse. And he was not someone who had normally been around a lot of horses. Mm-hmm. And he was terrified. Like, and not someone who would normally be, he just was like, because they are so powerful. They are like, you just have to be, you have to let the people who know what they're doing do their jobs, like the wranglers, and respect that. And if they say, no, we're not doing this again, you're not doing it again. The animals can't take it. And a show like Heartland, I have found is very, very respectful of that. That was my experience.
I think that we have run to the end of our time. There was one comment thanking you. I'm sure this is from everyone. To thank you for your advice and encouragement. There are a few more questions we didn't get to, but I wanted to thank you so much, Megan. Thank you. And thank you, Norma. And I've been asked to invite everyone to please stick around for the next Gimli Film Festival live stream event, a panel discussion on activism and documentary cinema. And thank you for tuning in, everyone. And hopefully we'll all work together in the future. And goodbye for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. Thank you.